Stefon Diggs just sent a message to the entire NFL, and MINA KIMES of ESPN confirmed it. We're gonna talk about it real soon. That is not a no, that is a signal, and in a minute, I am going to break down why signing him could be the best move Adam Peters makes this offseason, but also why there is one number that should stop you from celebrating too fast. While that is blowing up, an Eagles insider Jimmy Kempski had the nerve to tell Washington what to do with Darren Payne. And when I tell you why he did it, you are going to understand exactly what Philadelphia is afraid of when it comes to the burgundy and gold this season. And the name nobody in the DMV is talking about yet, Treylon Burks, is pulling up to OTAs on Wednesday with a personal call from David Blau in his pocket and something to prove to Jaden Daniels. That is the detail that changes everything about the receiver room in Ashburn. Raise hail. Let's get into it. Alright, let's get straight to it because this one deserves every second of your attention. Stefon Diggs and his brother Trevin were guests on the Rolling with Ramos podcast, hosted by Michael S. Ramos, and they got asked directly, point blank, is there any chance one or both of them suit up in burgundy and gold this season? And Stefon, a man with 7,000-yard receiving seasons on his resume, did not say no. He did not say no, fam. He said, and this was reported by ESPN's MINA KIMES. He said, word for word, that's what everybody is talking about right now. We're gonna talk about it real soon. Pause. You hear that? Real soon. Not nah, that's not happening. Not I don't see myself there. That is a man who knows exactly what he's doing with his words. And he deliberately left that door not just open, he left it with neon lights flashing. And ESPN didn't let that slide. Kevin Clark, MINA KIMES, and Bill Barnwell sat down to break down why this fit with the Commanders makes real football sense. Not just fan dream sense, not just DMV wishful thinking. Let's start with the numbers because this is where the conversation gets serious. Diggs is 32 years old. He's coming off an ACL tear less than 2 years ago. Last season with the New England Patriots, he barely crossed the 1,000-yard mark. If you stop there, you say, okay, declining player, pass. But Kevin Clark pulled back the curtain on the numbers that actually matter. The ones that teams are studying in their film rooms right now. Diggs had the highest catch rate in all of football last season, not just among receivers, in the entire NFL. On short passes specifically, his catch rate was 89%. 89%, man, the best of any wide receiver in the league. And he finished third in yards per route run, behind only Puka Nacua and Christian McCaffrey, a running back who moonlights as a slot receiver. What does that tell you? Diggs is not the explosive deep threat he was in Buffalo. That chapter is closed. But what he is right now at this stage of his career is something the Commanders desperately need. He is a first down machine. He is the kind of guy where Jaden Daniels on 3rd and 5 can look his direction and know, not hope, not think, know that the ball is going to the right hands. And Clark said something that I think is critical here. He spoke with head coach Dan Quinn a couple of weeks ago, and Quinn confirmed that the offensive design around Jaden Daniels is evolving. They want more explosives on the field. They want more weapons. New offensive coordinator David Blau arrives with a philosophy that demands receivers who can create separation on short and intermediate routes, who can be that quarterback's best friend that Clark described. And you know who does exactly that? Stefon Diggs. Look at what he did with Drake May in New England last year. May came in as a rookie, no experience, massive media pressure on a franchise still rebuilding its identity after the Brady era, and Diggs was literally his anchor. The guy he looked to when he needed to complete a pass, when he needed to breathe in a chaotic pocket moment. May had a dominant season, and a significant piece of that has Diggs' name written all over it. Now imagine that with Jaden Daniels. Jaden already showed in his second year that he has the talent to be among the best in this league. But he's entering year 3, which historically is where quarterbacks make that definitive leap, or where those without the right ecosystem stall out. Having Diggs as that release valve, that high certainty receiver you can go to when the play design doesn't fully develop, would change the offensive dynamic in Washington in ways that go beyond the basic stats. And the receiver room surrounding Jaden right now, with all due respect, does not yet inspire that kind of confidence. Terry McLaurin is a legitimate proven number 1. That's not up for debate. But after McLaurin, you've got Diami Brown and Van Jefferson on short-term deals as veteran speed options. You've got Luke McCaffrey coming back from injury. You've got rookie Antonio Williams, who beat reporters say is wowing coaches in workouts, but who is still an unwritten page in terms of NFL production. And you've got Treylon Burks, who we'll get into in a minute. That's the room the Commanders walk into 2026 with if nothing changes. And if you're Jaden Daniels looking at that depth chart heading into training camp, you want more. You deserve more. Now, the elephant in the room and the Brandon Ayuk reunion is getting complicated, and we've got news on that too because there are real developments. That basically clears the lane for Diggs as the most available, most willing, and, if you stick with the efficiency numbers, possibly the most fitting option for what Blau is trying to build. The only team that might jump ahead of Washington? KIMES mentioned the Las Vegas Raiders as potential competition. And look, I'm not sleeping on the Raiders, but the Commanders have something Las Vegas doesn't. They have Jaden Daniels. And for a veteran like Diggs in the final stretch of his career, playing alongside a generational quarterback on the rise matters. It matters a lot. We're gonna talk about it real soon. Fam, I'm not reading that as courtesy. I'm reading that as a signal. And if Adam Peters is reading it the same way, he better be making that call right now. No. And speaking of decisions that Peters has to defend, there's somebody in Philadelphia right now writing opinion pieces about our internal business. And honestly, the fact that an Eagles reporter is concerned about what we're doing on our defensive line tells me everything I need to know. Jimmy Kempski from Philly Voice, an Eagles outlet, fam. An Eagles outlet wrote this week that the Commanders should have cut Darren Payne, that it was an obvious decision, that freeing up more than $16 million in cap space was a no-brainer. And look, I get the surface level logic. Payne had 11.5 sacks in 2022, signed a $90 million deal, and since then has combined for only 11 sacks over 3 seasons. On paper, that's a real decline. His cap hit this year is almost $28 million. Cut him and you free up 16 plus million. The math works for Kempski's argument. But here's where I push back. Is a reporter from Philadelphia genuinely concerned about the health of the Washington Commanders' cap situation? Because if the Eagles are writing articles telling us what to do with our defensive line, that tells me they're worried about Payne having a bounce back season and making their life miserable in the NFC East. That tells me more than the article itself. Now, what's the actual tactical reality here? Adam Peters made a calculated decision. He didn't extend Payne's contract. He didn't add guarantees. But he didn't cut him either. He put him in the final year of his deal and essentially said, the stage is set. What are you going to do with it? That is smart roster management, not a mistake. Why? Because Payne in a contract year, we've seen this movie before. In 2022, that was exactly the context. Payne knew his next deal depended entirely on what he produced, and he delivered 11.5 sacks. He was the best interior defensive lineman in the NFC East that season, and he did it under the same motivational structure he's operating in right now. Is he 28 now instead of 24? Yes. Is wear and tear real for NFL defensive tackles? Absolutely. But it's also a contract year inside Durante Jones's defensive scheme, a coordinator who came in with specific ideas about how to use his interior linemen, and Payne has the athletic profile to thrive in that system if he gets that intensity back. And here's something Kempski conveniently leaves out. If Payne underperforms, the Commanders get a compensatory pick when he signs elsewhere in free agency next year. If he performs, Peters extends him on more team-friendly terms. There is no losing scenario for Washington in this situation. Kempski wanted the Commanders to cut Payne so the Eagles wouldn't have to deal with him. It's that simple. Reports out of Ashburn say Payne has been working exceptionally hard this offseason on his own before team workouts even begin. He's one of the longest tenured players in the organization now, which comes with leadership responsibility. And a proud man with a $28 million contract on the line does not show up to OTAs walking. Thanks for the concern, Philadelphia. We're good over here. And while Payne is arriving in Ashburn motivated, there's another player who also understands perfectly that these OTAs are not a warm-up. For him, they are literally the defining moment of his career, Treylon Burks. The name nobody expected to be saying seriously in a Washington Commanders conversation in 2026. This is a guy the Titans selected with the 18th overall pick in the 2022 draft. The same trade, ironically, that sent A.J. Brown to the Eagles. His NFL.com draft profile described him as A.J. Brown with more wiggle. That is an impossibly high standard for any human being who isn't A.J. Brown, and Burks paid the price for it. Foot injuries, knee injuries, collarbone issues. His body seemed to work against him at every single turn. He ended up getting waived by Tennessee and landed on the Commanders' practice squad in October of last year, with zero expectations attached. But he played played 8 games, posted 10 catches, 130 yards, and a touchdown on 22 targets. And that was enough for new offensive coordinator David Blau to personally call him and tell him there was a real role for him in Washington's 2026 system. That is not a small detail, bro. When an NFL offensive coordinator makes a personal call to convince a player to stay, it means he sees something on tape that the surface level roster evaluation doesn't capture. OTAs kick off on May 27th out in Ashburn. And Burks is arriving at a moment where the Commanders' receiver depth is genuinely fragile if nothing else gets added. If he stays healthy, if he builds chemistry with Jaden Daniels in Blau's system, he can force the organization's hand, not by displacing anyone, but by making the decision to cut the 4th or 5th receiver an uncomfortable one. Can he be the WR2? Honestly, right now, if he stays healthy and produces, the answer could be yes. Not the WR2 of an elite Super Bowl contender, but the WR2 of a team that is still building its offensive identity and needs dependable hands. Keep your eye on him because OTAs start Wednesday and they're going to tell a story about this team that's been building all offseason. Look, this is the kind of offseason we remember, not the boring one, not the predictable one. One where Stefon Diggs is dropping cryptic signals, where Brandon Ayuk is still floating out there, where Adam Peters is playing chess while everyone else is playing checkers. The Commanders are building something real in the DMV, and every piece of news this week has part of the puzzle inside it. If this fired you up the way it fired me up, drop that like right now. Not because I'm reading off a checklist, because you know this conversation deserves more eyes on it. And tell me down in the comments, do you sign Diggs right now or do you wait on Ayuk? Because that question does not have an easy answer and I need to know where the community stands. Raise hail, fam. You in the next one.